The Moonstone Gala glittered like a promise wrapped in broken glass. Sarah Nightshade smoothed her hands down the midnight blue silk of her dress, borrowed from her best friend Maya, hemmed twice because Sarah was shorter, the fabric whisper-soft against her palms. She didn't belong here among the crystal chandeliers and the elite wolves whose scents proclaimed their power, pine and petrichor, smoke and steel. Her own scent was gentler, quieter. Lavender and wild honey. The scent of an omega trying to convince the world she was enough. You are enough, she told herself, lifting her chin as she entered the grand ballroom of the Silver Peak Hotel. You have every right to be here. The invitation had come from the Northern Territories Pack Alliance, a networking event for emerging pack businesses. Her herbal apothecary, Nightshade Remedies, was barely surviving, held together by her grandmother's old recipes and Sarah's stubborn refusal to give up. She needed clients. Connections. A chance. What she didn't need was him. Derek Vaughn stood near the bar, his arm wrapped possessively around a willowy blonde in a dress that probably cost more than Sarah's rent. His eyes found her across the room like a predator scenting wounded prey, and his smile was all teeth. Sarah's stomach dropped. No. Not tonight. Please, not tonight. She turned sharply, pretending she hadn't seen him, and headed toward the hors d'oeuvres table. Her heart hammered against her ribs. 3 months. It had been 3 months since she'd ended things, since she'd finally gathered the courage to walk away from his casual cruelty disguised as concern, his control masked as protection. 3 months, and he still wouldn't let her go. Sarah. His voice came from directly behind her, and she flinched before she could stop herself. She set down the champagne flute she'd been reaching for and turned to face him, schooling her features into polite neutrality. Derek. I didn't know you'd be here. Didn't you? His smile widened. He was handsome in the way of storybook princes, golden hair, strong jaw, eyes the color of amber. She used to think those eyes were warm. Now she knew they were calculating. The Vaughn family has sponsored this event for 3 years. But then, you never did pay attention to pack politics, did you? The blonde appeared at his side, looking Sarah up and down with the kind of dismissive glance that suggested she'd already catalogued and rejected everything she saw. This is her. She's smaller than I expected. Jessica, this is my ex-girlfriend, Sarah. Derek's hand settled on Jessica's waist, a clear claim. Sarah runs a little herb shop in the lower district. Very quaint. The condescension in his voice made her jaw tighten. It's an apothecary. And business is good. Is it? His eyebrows rose in mock surprise. That's wonderful to hear. I was worried after you refused my help. You know how much I care about you, Sarah. Even after everything. His voice dropped, just slightly, the shift so subtle only she would catch it. Even knowing what I know. There it was. The threat, wrapped in silk. Sarah's fingers curled into her palms, nails biting crescents into her skin. I should go. It was good to see you both. Don't rush off. Derek stepped closer, crowding her space in a way that looked casual but felt like a cage. Jessica had already drifted toward a group of laughing wolves, uninterested in her boyfriend's ex. We should catch up. I've been thinking about you. About us. About that secret you're so desperate to keep. Her blood went cold. Derek. You know, I ran into Marcus Thornhill last week. He asked about you. Said his pack was considering using your services, but he wanted to make sure you were reputable. Of course, I told him I'd vouch for you. For old time's sake. His smile never wavered. Unless you'd rather I didn't? The message was clear. Play nice, or I'll destroy you. The secret Derek held wasn't the one he thought it was, wasn't the humiliating lie he'd convinced himself of when she'd broken up with him. But it was dangerous all the same. Dangerous enough that she'd spent 2 years hiding it, dangerous enough that exposure would mean losing everything. Her business. Her place in the pack. Possibly her freedom. What do you want, she whispered. Just to talk. Privately. He gestured toward the balcony doors, his expression all benevolent concern for anyone watching. 5 minutes of your time. That's all. Sarah's wolf stirred restlessly beneath her skin, a presence she'd grown used to silencing, to hiding, to keeping locked down so tight even she sometimes forgot it was there. Run, her instinct screamed. Run, run, run. But there was nowhere to go. Not without making a scene. Not without drawing exactly the kind of attention she couldn't afford. She followed him onto the balcony. The night air was crisp, carrying the scent of pine from the mountains and the distant promise of snow. The balcony overlooked the city, silver peaks spread out below them in rivers of light. The sounds of the gala muted behind the glass doors. They were alone. Derek's pleasant mask dropped the moment they were out of sight. You've been avoiding me, he said flatly. Blocking my calls. Refusing to meet. We broke up, Derek. That's what happens when relationships end. You ended it. I never agreed to that. You don't have to agree. It's not a negotiation. Everything's a negotiation, Sarah. He moved closer, backing her against the balcony railing. You think you can just walk away from me? Embarrass me in front of my pack? Make me look like I couldn't even keep an omega? There it was. The real wound. Not her absence, but the blow to his pride. I'm sorry you feel embarrassed, she said carefully, but I can't be with you anymore. We want different things. We're not compatible. Because you're wolfless. He said it quietly, viciously. Because you're broken. I overlooked that, Sarah. I was willing to accept you anyway. And you rejected me. The accusation was so absurd, so backwards, she almost laughed. Almost. But the look in his eyes stopped her. This was what he'd convinced himself of, that she was the damaged one, that he'd been charitable, that her rejection was an act of insanity rather than self-preservation. I'm not wolfless, she said, exhausted. I've told you that. Then prove it. Shift. Right now. He crossed his arms, waiting. She couldn't. Not here. Not where anyone might see. The whole point of hiding her wolf was that no one could know what she was, what made her different, what made her dangerous in ways the pack would never understand or accept. Her silence was answer enough for him. That's what I thought. Derek's laugh was ugly. You know what happens to wolves who can't shift, Sarah? They get cast out. Packless. Vulnerable. Without my protection, without my family's influence, how long do you think you'd last? I don't need your protection. Her voice shook despite her best efforts. I don't need you. No. He leaned in close enough that she could smell the whiskey on his breath. Then maybe Marcus Thornhill and the rest of your potential clients should know the truth about you. Maybe everyone here should know that Sarah Nightshade, the promising young apothecary, is nothing but a wolfless omega playing pretend. Panic clawed up her throat. He was going to do it. Right here, right now, he was going to shout her supposed shame to everyone who mattered, and she'd lose everything. A presence registered at the edge of her awareness. Power, thick and heavy as a thundercloud. The kind of dominance that made her hindbrain scream alpha so loudly every other thought went silent. Sarah's head snapped toward the balcony doors. A man stood there, half in shadow, watching them with eyes that caught the light like mirrors. He was tall, taller even than Derek. With dark hair that fell just past his collar and a face carved from severe, beautiful lines. He wore a black suit that probably cost more than her entire year's rent, and he carried himself with the absolute certainty of someone who'd never been challenged and survived to do it twice. She knew who he was. Everyone did. Kane Blackthorn. Alpha King of the Northern Territories. The cursed Alpha. And he was staring directly at her. Derek noticed her distraction and turned, his irritation melting into a mask of deference so sudden it was almost comical. Alpha Blackthorn. I apologize, We were just having a private conversation. Kane's gaze didn't shift from Sarah's face. Leave. It wasn't a request. Derek's jaw tightened, his wolf clearly bristling at the dismissal, but even he wasn't stupid enough to challenge the Alpha King. Of course. Sarah, we'll continue this discussion later. He left. The balcony door clicked shut behind him. And Sarah was alone with the most dangerous wolf in the territory, her heart trying to beat its way out of her chest, her mind screaming that she'd just gone from one disaster into another. Kane took a step forward. Then another. His scent hit her, winter frost and cedar smoke, something wild and barely contained. Her wolf whimpered, pressing close to the surface for the first time in months. He was threatening you, Kane said. It wasn't a question. Sarah's mouth had gone dry. It's complicated. Uncomplicated. I can't. The words tumbled out before she could stop them. I'm sorry, Alpha Blackthorn, I don't mean to be rude, but this isn't. I can handle Derek myself. Can you? His eyes, they were gray, she realized, the color of storm clouds, flicked toward the door where Derek had disappeared. He's Von Pack. Beta bloodline. Entitled and mean. His attention returned to her, sharp as a blade. What does he have on you? She should have lied. Should have laughed it off, made an excuse, gotten away from this man whose very presence made her feel like she was standing on a cliff's edge. Instead, she made a decision born of pure desperation. Sarah closed the distance between them in 3 quick steps, grabbed the lapels of Kane Blackthorn's $1,000 suit, and pulled him down to meet her. She kissed him. For one endless heartbeat, nothing happened. His lips were cold against hers, his body rigid as stone. Sarah's mind went blank with horror at what she'd just done, at the absolute insanity of kissing the Alpha King without permission, without invitation, without anything but her own panicked impulse. Then Kane's eyes flashed gold. Not the warm amber of normal wolves, but true gold, metallic, burning, wrong. His hands came up to grip her arms, and he made a sound low in his chest that was barely human. When he pulled back, not pushing her away but holding her at arm's length, staring at her like she'd just appeared out of thin air, his expression had shifted from shock to something Sarah couldn't name. His voice, when he spoke, was raw. Shattered. Mine. The word hit her like a physical force. The mate bond, dormant, theoretical, something she'd convinced herself she'd never feel, snapped into place with such intensity her knees nearly buckled. Golden thread, unbreakable and burning, suddenly connecting her heart to his. Oh no. Oh no, oh no, oh no. Sarah stumbled back, her hand flying to her chest as if she could physically feel the bond taking root. Kane was still staring at her, his pupils blown wide, his breathing harsh. For 3 seconds, maybe 5, they stood frozen. Then his expression changed. The shock drained away, replaced by something cold. Calculating. His features hardened into a mask of fury so absolute it stopped her breath. No, Kane said, and the word was a death sentence. Not you. Not now. He turned and walked away. Not hurried, but with the deliberate stride of a man fleeing something he couldn't fight, and disappeared back into the gala without looking back. Sarah stood alone on the balcony, her lips still tingling from the kiss, the mate bonds singing in her chest like a hook through her ribs. Behind her, she heard the balcony door open again. Heard Derek's sharp intake of breath. What, he said, his voice shaking with rage, did you just do? Sarah couldn't answer. Couldn't move. Couldn't do anything but press her hand to her chest and feel the golden thread pulling taut, stretching across the ballroom toward a man who'd looked at her like she was his salvation and his damnation in the same breath. The cursed Alpha. The king who'd killed his first mate. Her mate. She'd just made the worst mistake of her life. Wanting to see what would happen next, subscribe to this channel to get to listen to more of our upcoming exciting stories. Click on the subscribe button now. Thank you. Chapter 2. Sarah didn't sleep. She lay in her narrow bed above the apothecary, staring at the ceiling while the mate bond hummed beneath her ribs like a second heartbeat. Every time she closed her eyes, she saw Kane's face, the shock melting into fury, the way he'd said not now like she was a problem to be solved rather than a gift to be cherished. The way he'd walked away. Her wolf paced restlessly, confused and hurt by the rejection that wasn't quite a rejection. The bond was there, solid and real, pulling toward the north where the Blackthorn fortress sat like a crown on the mountain. But instead of joy, all Sarah felt was dread settling in her stomach like stones. She'd kissed the cursed Alpha. Found her mate. And possibly destroyed her life in the process. By the time dawn crept through her window, painting her small bedroom in shades of gray and gold, she'd made approximately 47 plans for leaving the territory. Maybe she could go west, to the coastal packs. Or south, where the wolf populations were smaller and questions were fewer. She could change her name. Dye her hair. Start over somewhere no one knew about Derek or the Alpha King or the desperate kiss that had changed everything. She was mentally packing her third hypothetical suitcase when someone knocked on the apothecary door downstairs. Sarah froze. The shop didn't open until 9, and it was barely past 7. The knocking came again, firm and insistent. She pulled on her robe and crept down the stairs, her bare feet silent on the worn wooden steps. Through the frosted glass of the front door, she could make out a tall figure, broad-shouldered and patient. Not Kane. Her bond would have screamed if it was Kane. She unlocked the door and found herself facing a man who looked like he'd been carved from granite and given a suit. He was massive, easily 6'4", with dark skin, sharp cheekbones, and eyes that assessed her with professional efficiency. His scent marked him as beta, powerful and steady as bedrock. Sarah Nightshade? His voice was a deep rumble. Yes? I'm Darius Kane, beta to the Northern Territories pack and personal advisor to Alpha King Blackthorn. He produced a cream-colored envelope from his jacket, sealed with black wax and the Blackthorn crest, a wolf's head crowned with thorns. The Alpha King requests your presence at the fortress this morning. A car is waiting. Sarah's stomach dropped to her feet. Requests. Darius's expression didn't change, but something that might have been sympathy flickered in his eyes. The Alpha King will see you at 8 o'clock. I'm instructed to wait while you make yourself presentable. Presentable. Right. Because she probably looked like she'd spent the night wrestling her own anxiety, which was accurate. And if I say no? Then I have secondary instructions to remind you that refusing a direct summons from your Alpha King is grounds for formal censure. He paused. But between you and me, Ms. Nightshade, I'd strongly recommend coming willingly. Whatever's happening between you and Kane, Alpha Blackthorn, it's better to face it head-on than let it fester. The use of Kane's first name suggested Darius knew more than he was saying. Sarah wondered if he'd been told about the mate bond, or if he'd simply been ordered to collect her without explanation. Fine, she heard herself say. Give me 20 minutes. 15, Darius countered. The Alpha doesn't like to be kept waiting. The Blackthorn fortress wasn't actually a fortress, it was a sprawling modern estate built into the mountainside, all glass and stone and sharp angles that looked like they could cut the sky. The drive took 30 minutes through winding mountain roads, and Sarah spent every second of it trying to calm her racing heart. He's your mate, she told herself. The bond means something. It has to mean something. But she couldn't forget the look in his eyes. The cold fury. The rejection. Darius led her through a side entrance, down hallways lined with artwork that probably cost more than her building, and finally to a set of double doors made of dark wood carved with intricate patterns. He knocked once, then opened the door without waiting for a response. Ms. Nightshade, as requested. Kane's office was enormous. Floor-to-ceiling windows overlooked the territory, the city spread out below like a toy model. The furniture was modern and minimal, a desk that looked like a single piece of carved stone, leather chairs, shelves lined with books. And plants. Dozens of them, thriving in the natural light, green and lush and carefully tended. Kane stood with his back to the door, staring out at his territory. He'd changed from last night's suit into dark jeans and a black sweater that did nothing to soften his presence. If anything, the casual clothing made him seem more dangerous, like a predator pretending to be domesticated. "Leave us," he said without turning. Darius hesitated for half a heartbeat, long enough to telegraph concern, then nodded and pulled the doors shut. The lock clicked with a finality that made Sarah's mouth go dry. Silence stretched between them, taut as a wire. The mate bond pulled insistently, urging her to close the distance, to touch him, to seek the comfort and connection that should have been natural. She stayed frozen by the door, her hands clasped in front of her to keep them from shaking. Finally, Kane turned to face her. In the morning light, he was devastating. Sharp jaw, high cheekbones, a mouth that would have been sensual if it wasn't currently pressed into a hard line. His eyes were the same storm cloud gray she remembered, but there were shadows beneath them that suggested his night had been no better than hers. Around his neck, on a thin silver chain, hung a delicate pendant, a moonstone wrapped in silver wire. It looked old, precious, and intimate. A token from his first mate, Sarah realized with a sick twist in her stomach. He was still wearing it. "You kissed me," Kane said flatly. No greeting. No preamble. "I'm sorry. I don't want your apology. I want to know why." He took a step toward her, his power radiating outward like heat. "You're an Omega. Low-ranking, no-pack connections, running a failing business in the lower district. I'm the Alpha King of the Northern Territories. We'd never met before last night. So explain to me, Sarah Nightshade, why you would be so desperate or so stupid as to kiss me in front of witnesses." Each word was precisely chosen, designed to cut. Sarah felt her cheeks burn with humiliation and anger in equal measure. "I told you, Derek was threatening me. And you thought assaulting me would solve that problem?" Kane's laugh was harsh. "Do you have any idea what you've done? By tomorrow, every pack in the territory will know we kissed. They'll be speculating about what it means, what our relationship is, whether I'm taking you as a mistress or a mate or just amusing myself with an Omega who got bold at a party. I didn't mean for any of this to happen. Yet here we are." He was close enough now that she could feel his body heat, smell the cedar smoke of his scent mixing with something darker. The mate bond snapped into place the moment our lips touched. "You felt it. I know you did." Sarah's hands clenched into fists. "Of course I felt it." "Good. Because I need you to understand something." His voice dropped lower, more dangerous. "I have been mateless for 7 years. 7 years since Alana died, since the bond shattered and took half my soul with it. I accepted that. I made peace with spending the rest of my life alone, focused on my pack, on my responsibilities. I was fine." The way he said fine suggested he was anything but. "And then you," Kane continued, "an Omega I've never met, who works with herbs and lives above her shop like some kind of medieval apothecary, you kiss me out of nowhere and suddenly I have a mate bond again. Do you think that's coincidence? Do you think the moon goddess is known for her sense of humor?" Sarah's breath caught. "You think what? That I somehow faked the mate bond? You tell me." He leaned closer, his eyes searching hers with an intensity that felt like being dissected. "Are you a witch, Sarah? Did you use magic to trap me?" Her blood turned to ice. "That's insane." "Is it?" Because witches were banished from pack territories 50 years ago for exactly this kind of manipulation. Love spells. Binding magic. And you're telling me that a random Omega just happened to kiss me at exactly the right moment, in exactly the right way, to trigger a mate bond? His jaw clenched. "I don't believe in coincidences. I'm not a witch." The lie tasted like ash on her tongue, but what else could she say? "Yes, actually, I am, and I've been hiding it my entire life because your grandfather led the purge that killed dozens of my mother's people." Kane stared at her for a long moment, and Sarah had the terrible feeling he could see right through her. "Then prove it," he said finally. "Undergo the sacred binding ceremony with me. If the bond is real, the ceremony will solidify it. If you used magic to fake it, the ritual will expose you. Sarah's mind reeled. The sacred binding ceremony? That's practically a marriage. It's exactly a marriage. A mating ceremony, to be specific. Kane stepped back, putting professional distance between them again, though the bond stretched taut at the separation. You have 1 month. We'll perform the ceremony at the next full moon, in front of my pack and the other territory alphas. It will be public, binding, and permanent. And if I refuse? His smile was sharp as broken glass. Then I'll reject the bond publicly. I'll announce that you attempted to trap me with false magic, and you'll be investigated by the Pack Council. Your reputation will be destroyed. Your business will fail. Derek Vaughn will be the least of your problems. The threat landed like a physical blow. Sarah's wolf snarled inside her chest, hating the ultimatum, hating the cage he was building around them. You can't force me to mate you. I'm not forcing anything. I'm giving you a choice. Kane's expression was carved from stone. Bind yourself to me willingly and accept your place as my mate, or refuse and face the consequences. Those are your options. That's not a choice, that's extortion. Call it whatever you like. He turned away from her, moving back to the windows, his broad shoulders rigid with tension. You created this situation when you kissed me. Now you'll deal with the fallout. Sarah wanted to scream. Wanted to storm out of his beautiful office with its carefully tended plants and its view of the kingdom he ruled with an iron fist. But she was trapped, by the bond, by Derek's threats, by the secret she'd been keeping for her entire adult life. Fine, she bit out. I'll do your ceremony. But I have conditions. Kane glanced back at her, one eyebrow raised. You're not in a position to negotiate. Then consider it a request from your future mate. She put as much steel in her voice as she could manage. I want Derek Vaughn to stay away from me. And I want to keep running my apothecary. I'm not giving up my business just because you've decided to collect me like one of your plants. Something that might have been respect flickered across his face, gone so quickly she might have imagined it. Done. I'll assign guards to keep Derek away from you. And you can keep your shop. He paused. But you'll move into the fortress within the week. You'll live here, in the mate's quarters, until the ceremony. I can't just abandon my apartment. You can and you will. If you're going to be my mate, you'll be under my protection. That means living where I can keep you safe. Safe from what? Sarah wanted to ask, but didn't. The rumors about the cursed alpha weren't kind. His first mate had died under mysterious circumstances, and some whispered that Kane himself had killed her in a fit of rage. Looking at his hard expression now, Sarah could almost believe it. Fine, she said again, feeling the walls close in around her. Anything else, Alpha? Her tone was sharper than she'd intended, laced with the frustration and fear she couldn't quite control. Kane's eyes narrowed, and the temperature in the room seemed to drop. Yes, actually. His voice was dangerously soft. You will not see Derek Vaughn again. You will not speak to him, respond to his messages, or acknowledge his existence. If he approaches you, you'll inform your guards immediately. Is that clear? Crystal. Good. Kane moved toward his desk, dismissing her with body language alone. Darius will arrange the move. You have until Friday to close any loose ends with your shop. The seamstress will come to you for measurements for the ceremony dress. And Sarah? She paused at the door, her hand on the ornate handle. Don't make me regret giving you this chance. The words settled on her shoulders like a weight. She left without responding, her throat too tight for speech. Darius was waiting in the hallway, his expression carefully neutral. How did it go? I'm being held captive by my mate and forced into a binding ceremony or he'll destroy my life. Sarah's voice came out sharper than she'd meant. So, you know. Tuesday. The beta's mouth twitched. He's not usually this. He searched for a word. Tyrannical? Controlling? Emotionally unavailable? Afraid, Darius finished quietly. Sarah stopped walking. Afraid? You're his second chance mate. Do you know how rare that is? Most wolves who lose their mate never find another. The bond is supposed to be once in a lifetime. Darius's dark eyes were serious. Cain spent 7 years accepting his fate, building walls around the parts of himself that died with Alana. And then you appeared and tore down everything he'd convinced himself was true. He's terrified. He has a funny way of showing it. He's an alpha king. He's not exactly fluent in vulnerability. Darius gestured toward the exit. Come on. I'll drive you home. You have packing to do. They were halfway down the hallway when it happened. A sharp spike of emotion, frustration, anger, fear, surged through Sarah's chest, and her control slipped. Just for a second. Just enough. Magic pulsed outward from her core, invisible but powerful, seeking purchase in the living things around her. The potted plants lining the hallway began to grow. Vines stretched toward the ceiling, leaves unfurling at impossible speed. A decorative ficus tree doubled in size, its roots cracking through the bottom of its container. No. No, no, no. Sarah slammed her walls back into place, suffocating her power, but the damage was done. The hallway looked like a jungle had exploded through it, green and wild and unmistakably magical. Darius stared at the plants, then at Sarah, his expression carefully blank. You're a lunar witch. It wasn't a question. Sarah's heart hammered against her ribs. I don't know what you're talking about. Don't. His voice was firm but not unkind. I've been beta long enough to recognize magic when I see it. And that, he gestured at the chaos of plants, is definitely witch magic. She wanted to run. Wanted to shift and bolt for the mountains, hide somewhere her secret couldn't catch up with her. But Darius's hand settled on her shoulder, gentle and grounding. Breathe, he said. I'm not going to tell anyone. You have to tell Cain. Do I? He raised an eyebrow. Last I checked, beta confidentiality was a thing. And you haven't done anything wrong. Yet. Sarah's laugh was half sob. Witches are banished. If anyone finds out. Then we'll make sure no one finds out. Darius squeezed her shoulder once, then let go. But Sarah? You need to get better control of your power. Because if you pull a stunt like this during the sacred binding ceremony, there won't be anything I can do to protect you. She nodded, mute with terror and relief in equal measure. They left through the side entrance, and Sarah didn't look back at the fortress that would become her prison in less than a week. She didn't think about the mate bond humming in her chest, or the cold fury in Cain's eyes, or the pendant he still wore around his neck. She didn't think about how her life had become a trap with no escape. At least, she tried not to. By the time Darius dropped her at the apothecary, it was barely noon, but Sarah felt like she'd lived 3 lifetimes. She trudged up to her apartment, stripped off her clothes, and stood under the shower until the water ran cold. When she finally emerged, wrapped in her softest robe, she found her phone lit up with messages. 7 from Maya, her best friend, all increasingly frantic variations of what the hell happened at the gala. 3 from her landlord, probably wondering about next month's rent. And 1 from an unknown number, I saw what you did. We need to talk. Derek. Sarah's blood turned to ice. He'd seen the kiss. He'd seen her with Cain. And now he was going to make her life a living hell, guards or no guards. She was deleting the message when someone knocked on her door. For one wild moment, she thought it might be Cain, come to continue their argument or issue more ultimatums. But when she cracked the door open, she found a young woman in a simple dress, carrying a leather portfolio. Sarah Nightshade? I'm Lissa, the fortress seamstress. Alpha Blackthorn sent me to take your measurements for the ceremony dress. She smiled, sweet and professional. May I come in? And just like that, the reality of her situation crashed down on her. She was going to marry the cursed Alpha. In front of the entire pack. In less than a month. Sarah opened the door wider and let her future walk in. If you're still listening to this story up to this point, why don't you subscribe to this channel to continue getting impactful daily stories like this? We would be most grateful if you can do that to help boost this video to reach everyone. Thank you. Chapter 3. The mates' quarters in the Blackthorn Fortress were more beautiful than anything Sarah had ever called home, and she hated every inch of them. The suite was enormous: bedroom, sitting room, private bathroom with a tub deep enough to swim in, decorated in shades of cream and silver with strategic pops of deep green. Floor-to-ceiling windows overlooked the northern forest, and someone had filled the space with plants, ferns and ivies, orchids and succulents, creating an indoor garden that should have felt like sanctuary. Instead, it felt like a gilded cage. Sarah stood at the window on her third night in the fortress, watching the moon rise over the mountains and feeling the mate bond pull toward the east wing where Kane's private rooms were. She'd barely seen him since she'd moved in. He'd sent Darius to oversee her settling in, sent the seamstress for fittings, sent servants with meals and fresh flowers and everything she could possibly need except his presence. The avoidance was deliberate. Professional. And it was driving her slowly insane. Her wolf paced restlessly beneath her skin, confused by the push-pull of having a mate who wouldn't acknowledge her. The bond hummed constantly, a low-level awareness of Kane's location, his emotional state, carefully locked down, his distance from her, too far, always too far. "This is ridiculous," she muttered to the empty room. She tried to keep busy. Maya had visited twice, full of questions and concern that Sarah couldn't fully answer. The apothecary was being managed by her part-time assistant, though Sarah made daily phone calls to check inventory and handle orders. Lissa the seamstress had been kind during the fittings, chattering about the ceremony while carefully not mentioning anything about Kane's first mate or the rumors that followed him. But at night, when the fortress went quiet and the bond pulled tightest, Sarah was alone with her thoughts and her fears and the growing certainty that she'd made a terrible mistake. She turned away from the window and crawled into the massive bed, pulling the covers up to her chin. Sleep came slowly, reluctantly. And then the dreams started. Fire everywhere. Smoke thick and black, choking her lungs, searing her eyes. She was running through corridors that twisted impossibly, searching for something, someone, desperately important. "Lyanna." The voice tore from her throat, raw with panic. "Lyanna, where are you?" Heat blasted against her skin. The ceiling groaned overhead, structural beams cracking. She pushed forward, following the mate bond that pulled like a fishhook through her chest, leading her toward a door. Locked. She slammed against it with her shoulder, once, twice, her wolf lending her strength even as the smoke made her movements clumsy. The wood splintered. Inside, a woman lay crumpled on the floor, her dark hair spread around her like a shroud. Beautiful even in death, her face peaceful, her lips slightly parted. But her skin was wrong, too pale, veins dark beneath the surface, like poison had turned her blood to ink. "No. No, no, no," she collapsed beside the body, gathering Lyanna into her arms, and the mate bond shattered like glass, pain exploding through her chest so intense she couldn't breathe, couldn't think, couldn't. Sarah woke up screaming. She lurched upright in bed, her hands clutching at her chest where phantom pain blazed like she'd been stabbed. Tears streamed down her face. Her breath came in ragged gasps that sounded like sobs. The door to her suite slammed open. Kane stood in the doorway, backlit by the hallway lights, wearing only sleep pants and an expression of raw terror. His eyes were wild, his chest heaving, and for a moment they just stared at each other. Sarah gasping and crying, Kane frozen in the doorway like he'd been struck. Then he moved, crossing the room in 3 strides and dropping to his knees beside her bed. "Sarah." His hands hovered near her face, not quite touching. "What happened? Are you hurt?" "I felt," he broke off, his jaw clenching. "Through the bond, I felt your pain." She couldn't speak. Couldn't explain that she'd just lived through his worst memory, felt his mate die in his arms, experienced the shattering of a bond she'd never known she could lose. Instead, she did something she'd sworn she wouldn't do. She reached for him. Cain caught her hands, his grip solid and grounding, and the bonds sang at the contact. Some of the phantom pain eased. Her breathing steadied. "I'm sorry," she managed. "I didn't mean to wake you. I had a dream. About the fire." His voice was flat, certain. "You dreamed about the night Lyanna died?" Sarah's eyes widened. "How did you know?" "Because I dream about it every night." Cain's thumb traced small circles on the back of her hand, an unconscious gesture of comfort. The mate bond sometimes causes shared dreams, especially between unmated pairs. "I should have warned you. I'm sorry." She studied his face in the dim light filtering from the hallway. Up close, she could see the shadows beneath his eyes, the tight set of his jaw, the barely controlled tension in his shoulders. He looked exhausted. Haunted. "Cain," she said softly. "What happened to her?" He was silent for so long she thought he wouldn't answer. Then, slowly, he pulled away from her and stood, moving to the window where she'd stood earlier. The moonlight painted him in shades of silver and shadow, highlighting the broad planes of his back, the rigid line of his spine. "There was a fire in the east wing," he said finally. 7 years ago. It started in the middle of the night. By the time the alarms went off, half the wing was engulfed. I was in a council meeting on the other side of the fortress. By the time I got there, his hands clenched into fists. The flames were too intense. The smoke was too thick. I tried to reach her. I got close enough to break down her door, but she was already gone. The poison, Sarah whispered before she could stop herself. Cain went absolutely still. What? Her heart hammered. She shouldn't know about the poison. Shouldn't have seen those dark veins beneath Lyanna's skin in the dream memory. I saw her in the dream. She looked. Describe her. It wasn't a request. Sarah swallowed hard and complied, describing Lyanna's peaceful expression, her dark hair, and carefully, tentatively, the strange discoloration of her skin. When she finished, Cain's shoulders had gone rigid as stone. "No one knew about that," he said quietly. "The poison. I paid the healers to keep it secret, told them to list cause of death as smoke inhalation. The council would have demanded an investigation, would have torn the pack apart looking for the killer. I couldn't, I was barely holding things together. I couldn't handle a witch hunt on top of everything else. So you let everyone think she died in the fire." Sarah's throat tightened. "And you let them think you couldn't save her." "I couldn't save her." His voice was raw with self-loathing. She was dying before the fire ever started. Someone had been poisoning her for months, maybe longer. I was so focused on pack politics, on border disputes and alliances, that I didn't notice my own mate was being murdered right under my nose. What kind of alpha, what kind of mate, does that make me? The pain in his words made her chest ache. Sarah slipped out of bed, pulling her robe tighter around herself, and crossed to where he stood. This close, she could see the scars on his left shoulder, puckered burn marks that twisted across his skin in jagged patterns. "You tried to save her," she said. "You went into a burning building for her. Too late." "I was too late." "But you tried." Sarah reached out slowly, telegraphing her movement, and placed her palm flat against his scarred shoulder. Cain flinched but didn't pull away. "You carry this. Every day. These scars, this guilt. You punish yourself for something that wasn't your fault. You don't know that." "Yes, I do." She met his eyes, gray and storm-tossed in the moonlight. "Because I've spent the last 2 years punishing myself for Derek. For staying too long, for believing his lies, for letting him convince me I was broken and dangerous and lucky to have him. I blamed myself for his cruelty. But it wasn't my fault. And Lyanna's death wasn't yours." Cain stared at her like she'd spoken a foreign language. Then, very quietly, he said, "Derek told you that you were dangerous?" "He told me a lot of things." Sarah's hand was still on his shoulder, and she could feel the old injury beneath her palm. Tissue damage, nerve pain that probably flared in cold weather or when he overextended. Her magic stirred beneath her skin, responding to the hurt, wanting to heal. He said my family was toxic and I was better off cutting them out. He said my independence was actually selfishness. He said I couldn't shift because I was broken inside, and he was generous for staying with someone so damaged. He isolated you. Kane's voice had gone dangerously soft. Classic abuser technique. Make you think you're worthless so you'll be grateful for scraps of affection. I know that now. I didn't then. She took a breath, making a decision that felt both reckless and necessary. Kane, I'm going to do something, and I need you to not freak out. His eyes narrowed. That's never a good start to a sentence. Sarah let her magic flow. It poured from her core down through her arm, warm and green as spring, seeking the damaged tissue in his shoulder. She felt the old injury map itself in her mind, severed nerves, scar tissue that had healed wrong, chronic inflammation. Her magic sank into the damaged areas, coaxing cells to remember their proper form, encouraging blood flow, easing the constant low-level pain he'd been living with for 7 years. Kane's sharp intake of breath told her he felt it. His hand came up to cover hers, not pulling away but holding her in place. You're a witch, he said. Not an accusation. A fact. A lunar witch, Sarah confirmed quietly. From my mother's line. She died when I was young, but she taught me enough to hide what I was. I've been suppressing my magic my entire adult life because I knew what would happen if anyone found out. The purge. His jaw clenched. My grandfather led it. 50 years ago, when witches were accused of corrupting pack bonds and manipulating alphas. Dozens were banished. Some were killed. I know. And you kissed me anyway. Kane turned to face her fully, her hands still pressed against his shoulder, his covering it. Knowing what my family did to yours. I kissed you out of desperation, not strategy. Sarah managed a weak smile. Though I'll admit, finding out you're my mate after everything your family did to eliminate witches from the territory feels like the moon goddess has a twisted sense of humor. Or a sense of justice. His gray eyes searched hers. Is that why you can't shift? The witch magic interferes with your wolf. No. I can shift just fine. She took a breath. I've been hiding my wolf because she's different. Marked by the magic. If anyone saw her, they'd know immediately what I am. Show me. What? Shift for me. His hand tightened over hers. I want to see. Sarah's heart hammered. Kane, if anyone else sees. There's no one else here. Just us. Just your mate asking to see all of you, not just the parts you think are safe to show. His voice dropped lower, rough with an emotion she couldn't name. Please, Sarah. Trust me with this. The vulnerability in those words undid her. She stepped back, letting her robe fall to the floor, and called her wolf forward. The shift came easily, more easily than it had in months, without the constant suppression. Bones rearranged, muscles reformed, and then she was standing on 4 legs instead of 2. Her wolf was smaller than most, built for speed rather than strength, with fur the color of moonlight, silver-white with hints of lavender at the tips, like her coat had been dipped in twilight. Her eyes glowed faintly green, the same shade as her magic. She was beautiful and strange and undeniably marked by witch magic. Kane dropped to one knee in front of her, his expression unreadable. Then, slowly, he reached out and buried his fingers in her fur. Gods, he breathed. You're stunning. Sarah's wolf preened under the praise, leaning into his touch. Through the bond, she felt his awe, his acceptance, his. The door burst open. Darius stood in the doorway, slightly out of breath, his expression grim. Kane, we have a problem. Derek Vaughn is at the front gate demanding an audience. He's claiming he has evidence that Sarah is a threat to the pack. Sarah shifted back to human form in a rush, grabbing her robe and yanking it on while Kane's expression went from soft to furious in a heartbeat. "He's not getting anywhere near her," Kane growled. "He's invoked his right as a pack member to address the Alpha Council," Darius said grimly. "He's brought 3 council members with him. They're convening an emergency session. You have to come." Kane looked at Sarah, conflict clear in his face. She could feel his wolf snarling through the bond, wanting to stay, wanting to protect his mate. But duty pulled him away. "Stay here," he ordered. "Lock the door. Don't let anyone in except Darius." "Kane. Promise me." His hand cupped her face, thumb brushing her cheekbone. "Please." She nodded, and he was gone, Darius on his heels. Sarah stood alone in her gilded cage, the mate bond stretching tight as Kane moved deeper into the fortress, and tried to calm the panic rising in her chest. She lasted approximately 15 minutes before curiosity and anxiety won out over obedience. The fortress library was on the 2nd floor, accessible by a back staircase that the servants used. Sarah had discovered it during one of her carefully supervised tours, a massive room lined floor to ceiling with books, comfortable reading chairs scattered throughout. At this hour, well past midnight, it would be empty. She needed to think. Needed space away from her quarters and the lingering scent of Kane's presence. Needed to understand what Derek could possibly have that he thought constituted evidence. The library was dark when she slipped inside, lit only by moonlight streaming through tall windows. She didn't turn on the lights. Instead, she moved to the history section, running her fingers along leather spines until she found what she was looking for, a book on pack law and binding ceremonies. If Derek was going to the council, she needed to know what they could actually do to stop her mating with Kane. She'd been reading for maybe 20 minutes, learning about the various grounds for rejecting a mate bond, mutual consent, proof of manipulation, evidence of danger to the pack, when she felt it. A presence behind her. Malevolent. Wrong. Sarah spun, the book tumbling from her hands, and found herself face to face with a figure in a dark cloak, face hidden behind a featureless mask. "You should have stayed away, witch," the figure hissed. Then they lunged. Sarah's training kicked in, 2 years of self-defense classes she'd taken after finally leaving Derek. She ducked the first blow, grabbed a heavy bookend from the shelf, and swung. It connected with the attacker's shoulder, and they stumbled back with a grunt of pain. Male, she catalogued. Strong. Taller than her by at least 6 inches. He recovered faster than she'd hoped, lunging again. This time his hand closed around her throat, slamming her back against the bookshelf hard enough to rattle her skull. Books tumbled down around them. "Did you really think you could just waltz in here and take the Alpha King?" His voice was distorted, mechanically altered. "After what your kind did? After the corruption you spread?" Sarah clawed at his hands, her vision starting to gray at the edges. Her magic surged, desperate, and vines erupted from the potted plants nearby, but he was ready for it. He had something in his other hand, a charm that glowed sickly yellow, and where it touched her magic, the vines withered and died. "Witchbane," he growled. "Did you think you were the only one who could use magic?" Her lungs burned. Black spots danced in her vision. She was going to die here, in this beautiful library, and Kane would think she'd run away, would think. The attacker flew backwards, ripped away from her by an invisible force. Darius stood in the doorway, his eyes glowing gold with his beta dominance, one hand outstretched. "Touch her again and I'll rip your throat out." The masked figure scrambled to his feet and bolted for the window. He crashed through the glass in a shower of glittering shards and was gone, disappearing into the night. Darius rushed to Sarah's side as she collapsed to her knees, gasping. "Are you all right?" "Sarah, look at me." "Fine," she wheezed. "I'm fine." "What, how did you know?" "I've been having guards shadow you at a distance. When they lost sight of you, they came to me." His hands were gentle as he checked her throat, his expression darkening at what he found. "You're going to have bruises." "He called me a witch." "He had witchbane." Sarah's hands were shaking. Darius, someone in this fortress knows what I am. And they tried to kill me. We need to tell Kane. No. She grabbed his arm. Not yet. Not while Derek is here with the council. If this gets out now, they'll use it against me. They'll say I'm dangerous, that the bond needs to be rejected. She took a shaky breath. Please. Just, give me time to figure this out. Darius looked torn. But finally, he nodded. 24 hours. Then I'm telling Kane whether you want me to or not. Understood? She nodded, and he helped her to her feet. That's when she saw it. A book on the floor near where the attacker had been standing, partially hidden under the scattered volumes. It was old, leather-bound, with no title on the spine. Sarah picked it up with trembling hands and opened it. A letter fell out, yellowed with age, written in elegant script. My dearest Kane. If you're reading this, I am dead. I'm leaving this with Meredith in the library, trusting that she'll find a way to get it to you if something happens to me. I fear I don't have much time. Someone has been poisoning me, slowly, carefully, in doses small enough that I've only recently realized what's happening. My healers believe I'm simply under stress, that my exhaustion and weakness are normal for a new Luna adjusting to her role. But I know better. I've tried to discover who's behind it, but I don't know who to trust. The council members watch me with calculating eyes. The servants who bring my tea smile too widely. Even pack members I thought were friends seem to avoid me now. I'm writing this as insurance, and as a confession, I am a descendant of the lunar witches, Kane. My grandmother was one of the witches who escaped the purge. She taught my mother, who taught me. I hid my magic from you because I loved you and I was afraid you'd reject me, afraid of repeating history. Someone found out. Someone knows what I am, and they're killing me for it. If I die, investigate the council. Question everyone close to us. Don't let them tell you it was an accident. And Kane, please don't blame yourself. You gave me the happiest years of my life. I love you. I will always love you. Forever yours. Lyanna. Sarah's hands shook so badly she nearly dropped the letter. Lyanna had been a witch. Had been murdered for it. And the killer was still here, in the fortress, wearing a mask and carrying witchbane. Sarah? Darius's voice seemed to come from very far away. What is that? She handed him the letter, unable to speak. His expression grew darker with every line he read. When he finished, he looked up at her with something like horror in his eyes. We need to tell Kane, he said. Right now. If there's a murderer on the council. A door slammed somewhere in the fortress. Raised voices echoed through the halls. Darius's phone buzzed. He glanced at it and cursed. The council session just ended. Derek's making a formal complaint to the Pack Council of Territories. They're calling for an investigation into your background and a postponement of the binding ceremony. Can they do that? If 3 council members vote for it, yes. His jaw clenched. And Derek just convinced exactly 3 of them. The pieces fell into place with sickening clarity. Derek hadn't just shown up to cause problems. He'd been invited. Someone on the council wanted to stop her bond with Kane, wanted to keep digging into her past until they found proof she was a witch. And then they'd kill her, just like they'd killed Lyanna. Darius, Sarah whispered. I think I know who attacked me. Before he could respond, footsteps thundered down the hallway. Kane appeared in the doorway, his eyes wild, his power radiating outward like a shock wave. He took one look at Sarah, at the bruises forming on her throat, the broken glass, the scattered books, and his expression went absolutely feral. Who? The word was barely human. Who touched you? Sarah opened her mouth to explain, but Kane was already moving past her, following the scent trail of her attacker toward the broken window. She heard him roar with rage, felt the mate bond thrumming with violence barely contained. Darius pressed the letter into her hands. Hide this. Don't tell anyone you found it until we know who we can trust. Then he was gone, chasing after Kane, leaving Sarah alone in the destroyed library with proof that history was repeating itself. And this time, she was the one in danger. If you're still listening to this story up to this point, why don't you subscribe to this channel to continue getting impactful daily stories like this? We would be most grateful if you can do that to help boost this video to reach everyone. Thank you. Chapter 4. The council's decision to postpone the binding ceremony came down like a guillotine blade, swift, final, and designed to sever. Sarah sat in Kane's office the morning after the attack, nursing a cup of tea that had gone cold in her hands while he paced like a caged wolf. Darius stood by the window, his expression carved from stone, and the tension in the room was thick enough to choke on. 3 votes, Kane snarled for the 4th time. Elder Thorne, Counselor Blackwell, and Counselor Pierce. All citing concerns about the Omega's background and the need for proper vetting. As if I'm taking a fucking business partner instead of claiming my mate. They're within their rights, Darius said quietly. Pack law is clear. If 3 council members request an investigation before a binding ceremony. I know what pack law says. Kane's hands clenched into fists. What I don't understand is why. Thorne has been my most trusted advisor for 15 years. He helped me rebuild after Lyanna died. Why would he suddenly decide my mate isn't suitable? Because he knows what I am, Sarah thought but didn't say. Because he killed your first mate for being a witch, and now he's trying to stop me from completing whatever prophecy Lyanna was researching. The letter was hidden in her room, tucked between the pages of a book of poetry that no one would think to search. She'd wanted to tell Kane immediately, but Darius had been right, they didn't know who they could trust. If the wrong person found out they had proof of Lyanna's murder, they'd destroy the evidence and disappear. Or they'd kill Sarah before she could reveal the truth. I need to use the bathroom, she said abruptly, setting down her teacup. Kane stopped pacing. I'll have someone escort you. I can walk to the bathroom by myself. She tried to soften it with a smile. I'm not going to run away, Kane. Where would I even go? His expression suggested he didn't find that reassuring, but he nodded. Take your phone. If anything feels wrong, I'll call immediately. I promise. She slipped out before he could add more conditions to her 30-foot journey down the hallway. But she didn't go to the bathroom. Instead, she took the servants' stairs down to the basement level, where the fortress archives were kept. Breaking into the archives turned out to be easier than expected, which probably should have worried her. The door was locked, but Sarah's magic made short work of it. She coaxed the metal tumblers to shift, the lock clicking open with barely a whisper of sound. Inside, the archives were exactly what she'd expected: rows of filing cabinets, shelves packed with record books, boxes stacked to the ceiling containing the documented history of the Blackthorn Pack. And no security. No cameras, no guards, nothing but dust and silence. Too easy, her instinct screamed. This is too easy. But she was already here, and time was running out. The investigation could take weeks, and she'd bet her life that whoever killed Lyanna would find a way to make evidence appear that proved Sarah was dangerous. She needed answers now. She started with the records from 7 years ago, pulling files on Lyanna's death. The official report was sparse: fire, smoke inhalation, tragic accident. No mention of poison. No investigation into potential foul play. Just Kane's signature at the bottom, authorizing the burial and closing the case. Sarah's chest ached looking at his handwriting from 7 years ago, the same bold script but shakier, like his hand had trembled holding the pen. She moved on to Lyanna's personal effects. They were stored in a box labeled with her name and death date, and when Sarah opened it, her breath caught. Journals. Dozens of them, leather-bound and filled with Lyanna's elegant handwriting. Sarah grabbed the most recent one and flipped it open to the last entry, dated 2 days before the fire. I found it. The prophecy grandmother told me about, the one the council tried to erase from Pack history. It's real, and it's about us, about what our bloodline was meant to do. The moon-blessed union. An Alpha King and a Lunar Witch, bonded by fate, powerful enough to break the curse that's plagued werewolf bloodlines for generations. The curse of violence, of alphas losing control, of packs tearing themselves apart from the inside. Cain doesn't know about my heritage yet. I've been too afraid to tell him. But I think this is why we were brought together. Why the moon goddess gave us this bond. We're meant to heal something that's been broken for centuries. I need to tell him. Tomorrow. I'll tell him tomorrow, and we'll figure out what this means together. Sarah's hands shook as she turned the page, but there was nothing else. Just blank pages that would never be filled. She grabbed another journal, this one older, and found research. Pages and pages of notes about the prophecy, about Lunar Witch bloodlines, about the curse itself. Lyanna had been thorough, methodical, tracking down every reference she could find. And there, tucked between 2 pages, was a photocopy of an ancient text. When the moon bleeds silver and the wolf crowns his witch. When magic and Fang are joined without fear. The curse of rage shall break upon their union. And the packs shall know peace for 100 years. But beware the false shepherd who guards the old ways. For he shall see destruction where others see salvation. And his hand shall be stained with the blood of the moon. Sarah read it 3 times, her heart hammering harder with each pass. She and Cain. This was about them. A moon-blessed union that could break the curse of alpha violence, the same curse that made alphas like Cain feared for their power, that made packs unstable, that kept the territories constantly on the edge of war. And someone had killed Lyanna to prevent it. Find what you were looking for? Sarah spun around so fast she dropped the journal. Elder Thorn stood in the doorway, his expression pleasant, his hands clasped behind his back. He was an older wolf, silver-haired and distinguished, with the kind of face that suggested wisdom and trustworthiness. She'd met him twice since arriving at the fortress, and he'd been nothing but polite. Now, looking at him, she saw the monster behind the mask. Elder Thorn. She forced her voice to stay steady. I was just doing some research. About the binding ceremony. Were you? He stepped into the room, and Sarah became acutely aware that they were underground, alone, with no one knowing where she'd gone. How curious. Most mates research ceremony traditions, not ancient prophecies and dead predecessors. Her magic stirred beneath her skin, ready to defend. I should get back. Cain will be wondering where I am. Cain is in an emergency council meeting. Called by me, 15 minutes ago. Thorn's smile didn't waver. We have at least an hour before anyone comes looking for you. Plenty of time for an honest conversation. Sarah's phone was in her pocket. If she could just reach it, send a message. Don't. Thorn's hand came out from behind his back, revealing a small device that pulsed with sickly yellow light. Witchbane, the same thing her attacker had used in the library. I'd hate to have to hurt you before we've had our talk. Though I will if I must. Her mind raced. Fight or flight? Try to overpower him with magic, knowing he had a weapon specifically designed to counter it? Or play along and hope someone noticed she was missing? You killed Lyanna, she said, buying time. I protected the pack. Thorn's voice was calm, matter-of-fact. She was a witch, descended from the very coven that corrupted our ancestors, that twisted our bonds and turned wolves against each other. Did you know that's where the Alpha curse comes from? Lunar witch magic, cast in spite 300 years ago when the packs banished them from our lands. That's not true. Oh, but it is. The witches cursed our bloodline. Made our alphas violent and unstable, ensured our packs would never know peace. And Lyanna thought she could break it? His laugh was ugly. She thought bonding with Cain, creating this moon-blessed union, would somehow undo centuries of righteous justice. She was delusional. She was trying to help. She was trying to corrupt him. Just like you're trying to corrupt him now. Thorn took another step closer. You're Silvermoon, aren't you? I suspected, but Derek confirmed it. The last daughter of the Silvermoon Coven, thought to be extinct. Your magic is even stronger than Lyanna's was. Derek. Of course Derek was involved. Sarah's stomach turned. I don't know what you're talking about, she tried. Don't you? Thorn tilted his head. Your mother was Sarah Silvermoon, daughter of the High Priestess. She fled to the werewolf territories 30 years ago, pregnant and alone, and managed to hide among us. She taught you to suppress your magic, to hide your wolf because it was marked by witch power. She died when you were 10, and you've been pretending to be normal ever since. Every word was accurate, precise, damning. Sarah's mouth went dry. How do you? Because I've been hunting your bloodline for decades, Thorn said simply. The Silvermoon Coven held the strongest magic among the lunar witches. If any witches survived the purge, they would be Silvermoon. When Sarah appeared in our territory, I knew what she was. I arranged her death to look like an accident. The world tilted. You killed my mother. I eliminated a threat. Just as I eliminated Lyanna when I discovered what she was planning. Just as I'll eliminate you. He raised the Witchbane device. But first, you're going to help me with something. Sarah's magic surged, desperate, but the yellow light from the device intensified and her power withered. Pain lanced through her chest. She gasped, falling to her knees. The prophecy mentions a union, Thorn continued, almost conversational. Magic and Fang joined. But it doesn't specify that the joining has to be consensual. If I bind your power to myself, claim you through a blood ritual, I can access your magic while keeping you suppressed. And then I'll use that power to strengthen the curse, not break it. Ensure the packs remain divided and violent. Ensure wolves like me, who understand the old ways, remain necessary. You're insane, Sarah gasped. I'm a patriot. He reached for her, and she tried to scramble back, but the Witchbane made her clumsy, weak. His hand closed around her arm in a grip like iron. Now come along quietly, or I'll hurt you badly enough that you'll wish you had. The last thing Sarah managed before Thorn dragged her out of the archives was to hit send on a text message. She'd typed it while pretending to brace herself on the floor, her phone hidden beneath her body, her fingers fumbling over the keys. She had no idea if it was even coherent, but she sent it to the one person she knew would understand. Darius. Archives. Thorn. Help. Then Thorn yanked her to her feet, pressed something cloth and chemical-smelling over her mouth, and the world went dark. Kane felt it the moment Sarah's consciousness cut out. The mate bond, which had been humming with her anxiety and determination, suddenly went silent. Not severed, he would have collapsed if the bond had been broken, but muted, like she'd been knocked unconscious or drugged. Terror, pure and primal, flooded his system. Where is she? He was on his feet before he realized he'd moved, his wolf rising to the surface so fast his eyes flashed gold. Darius, where is Sarah? The emergency council meeting, which Thorn had called to discuss additional concerns about the Omega's suitability, ground to a halt. 6 council members stared at him in confusion. Darius's phone buzzed. He looked down at it, and his expression went absolutely murderous. She's in trouble. Archives. Thorn has her. Kane's gaze snapped to Elder Thorn's seat. It was empty. For one endless moment, the pieces rearranged themselves in his mind. Thorn calling an emergency meeting. Thorn voting to postpone the ceremony. Thorn being one of the only people who knew about Lyanna's research. Thorn who'd been so supportive after Lyanna's death, who'd helped Kane bury his grief and move forward. Thorn who'd encouraged him to choose a proper mate. Who'd always seemed slightly too interested in pack bloodlines and magical threats. That fucking, Kane didn't finish the sentence. He was already running, Darius on his heels, the mate bond pulling him toward the archives like a compass needle finding north. They reached the archives in under 2 minutes. The door was open, swinging on its hinges. Inside, papers were scattered everywhere, and Lyanna's journals lay open on the floor. But no Sarah. No Thorn. Kane's vision went red at the edges. Cain. Darius gripped his shoulder. Look. She was researching something. He picked up one of the journals, showed Cain the entry about the prophecy. The moon-blessed union. The curse. Everything Lyanna had been trying to tell him before she died. Thorn killed her, Cain said, his voice barely human. He killed Lyanna because she was a witch trying to break the curse. And now he has Sarah. There's more. Darius handed him a photocopied page. The prophecy about the false shepherd whose hand would be stained with moon blood. I think Thorn is planning some kind of ritual. If he's trying to bind Sarah's power. A commotion at the archives entrance made them both spin. Derek Vaughn stood there, flanked by 2 guards, looking like he'd rather be anywhere else. His usual arrogant confidence was gone, replaced by something that looked almost like guilt. Cain had him pinned against the wall before anyone could blink, one hand around his throat, claws extended and pressing into skin. Where is she? I don't know, Derek choked out. I swear, I don't know. Thorn told me he just wanted to delay the ceremony, that he'd make sure Sarah ended up with me instead. He never said anything about kidnapping. You helped him. Cain's grip tightened. You were working with the man who killed my first mate to sabotage my bond with my second. Give me one reason I shouldn't rip your throat out right now. Because I know what Sarah is. Derek gasped. And if you kill me, you'll never understand what you're dealing with. Cain hesitated. Darius moved closer, his hand on Cain's arm, silently urging restraint. Talk, Cain growled. Fast. Derek's words came out in a rush. Sarah Nightshade isn't her real name. It's Sarah Silvermoon. She's the last daughter of the Silvermoon Coven, the most powerful lunar witch bloodline. I was sent by the Shadowfang Pack 2 years ago to find her, get close to her, keep her weak and controlled so they could use her power in the territory wars. Cain's blood went cold. Everything? Your entire relationship was a mission. At first. Derek's expression twisted. But then I actually got to know her, and she was kind and strong and nothing like what the Shadowfang Alphas said witches were. I started to care about her. When she broke up with me, I was furious because I'd failed my mission, but also because I'd lost her. So you threatened to expose her secret. I thought she was wolfless. That was easier to hold over her than admitting I knew about the witch magic. I wanted her back, wanted to prove I could complete my mission. Derek's laugh was bitter. I was an idiot. And when Thorn approached me, offered to help me get Sarah in exchange for information about her background, I thought I was being clever. You thought you could trade her like property, Cain snarled. Yes. I know. I'm a bastard. Derek met his eyes. But I never agreed to her being hurt. Never agreed to whatever Thorn is planning. When I realized he wasn't in the council meeting, when I saw you running this direction, I knew something was wrong. Darius stepped forward. If Sarah is Silvermoon, her magic is strong enough to break or strengthen the curse. Thorn must be planning to bind her power to himself through a blood ritual. Do you know where he would take her? Derek's face went pale. The old temple. In the northern forest. It's where the original Lunar Witch Coven used to perform their rituals before the purge. Thorn's been obsessed with it for years, said it was a symbol of corruption that should be destroyed. But he never actually destroyed it. Because he was waiting, Cain realized with sick certainty. Waiting for a witch powerful enough to make his ritual work. How long? Cain released Derek, letting him stumble back. How long do we have before he completes the ritual? I don't know. But Derek swallowed hard. If he's using the old magic, he'll need to wait for moonrise. That's when witch power is strongest. We have maybe 2 hours. 2 hours to find Sarah before Thorn bound her power to himself, before he turned the woman Cain loved into a living battery for his twisted vision of pack purity. Cain's wolf surged beneath his skin, demanding blood, demanding vengeance. But first, they needed a plan. Darius, gather every loyal wolf in this fortress. Full combat gear. We're going to the Northern Temple. He turned to Derek, his expression promising violence. You're coming with us. If you try to run, I'll hunt you down and make your death last days. Understood? Derek nodded, pale but determined. I'll help. I owe Sarah that much. They moved as one, racing against the clock and the rising moon. And in the back of Kane's mind, through the muted mate bond, he felt a flicker of consciousness. Sarah waking up. Sarah afraid but fighting. Hold on, he sent through the bond, praying she could feel it. I'm coming. Just hold on. Sarah woke to cold stone beneath her cheek and the smell of decay. Her head pounded where the chloroform had done its work, and her wrists burned. She was bound with silver chains, the metal searing her skin even through her long sleeves. Her magic was suppressed, held down by the witchbane device that sat on an altar nearby, pulsing its sickly light. She was in a temple. Ancient stone walls carved with symbols she half recognized from her mother's teachings, a domed ceiling open to the sky where the sun was beginning to set. In a few hours, the moon would rise. And Thorn would complete his ritual. He stood near the altar now, arranging items with the care of a man who'd been planning this for years. Silver knives. Candles made from black wax. A chalice filled with something dark that she didn't want to identify. You're awake, he said without turning. Good. I need you conscious for this to work. Sarah's voice came out hoarse. Kane will come for me. I'm counting on it. Thorn finally looked at her, and his expression was almost pitying. He'll come, see you bound and helpless, and his alpha instincts will override his common sense. He'll try to fight me, and I'll kill him. Then you'll be truly alone, and the ritual will be even stronger. Grief and fear make excellent fuel for blood magic. You're a monster. I'm a protector. He selected one of the knives, testing its edge. The werewolf territories have been at peace for 7 years because of the curse. Packs are too busy managing their own alphas to start wars. Remove the curse, and we'll descend into chaos, alliances shifting, power grabs, violence spreading like wildfire. The curse is the only thing keeping us stable. That's insane. That's reality. Thorn moved toward her, and Sarah tried to scramble back, but the chains held her in place. Lyanna didn't understand that. She thought love and magic could fix everything. She was naive. She was trying to help. She was trying to destroy everything our ancestors built. Just like you would, if I gave you the chance. He grabbed her chin, forcing her to meet his eyes. But I won't. Your power will be mine, your magic will strengthen the curse, and the packs will remain exactly as they should be. Violent. Divided. Controllable. Through the bond, Sarah felt a surge of emotion that wasn't hers. Kane. Coming closer. Furious and terrified in equal measure. She had to buy time. Had to keep Thorn talking until the temple doors slammed open. But it wasn't Kane who entered first. It was Derek, his eyes wild, his chest heaving. Behind him, she could see dozens of wolves in combat gear, and Darius at the front, and finally, Kane. His eyes found hers across the temple, and the relief that crashed through the bond was almost enough to knock her over. He started toward her, but Thorn moved faster, pressing the silver knife against her throat. Stop, Thorn ordered. Come any closer and I open her throat. Kane froze, every muscle in his body coiled to strike. His eyes were pure gold, his wolf at the surface, barely contained. Let her go, Thorn. So you can complete the prophecy? Break the curse and plunge us into chaos? Thorn's laugh was ugly. I don't think so. I've spent 30 years hunting Silvermoon witches, ensuring this prophecy would never be fulfilled. I'm not stopping now. You killed Lyanna. Kane's voice was steady, but Sarah could feel his rage through the bond. You poisoned her for months, then set fire to the East Wing to cover your crime. She was a witch trying to corrupt you. I did what was necessary. She was my mate. And you murdered her. To protect you. To protect all of us. Thorne's hand shook slightly, the knife pressing harder. Sarah felt a trickle of blood where the blade bit into her skin. You were grieving, blind to the truth. Someone had to act. Derek stepped forward, his hands raised in a placating gesture. Elder Thorne, I know I helped you. I know I gave you information about Sarah. But this has gone too far. Just, let her go. We can talk about this. You? Thorne's attention swung to Derek, and his expression curdled with contempt. You're a Shadowfang spy who fell for his target. You're weak. Compromised. I should have known better than to trust you. Maybe. Derek took another step. But at least I figured out that love isn't weakness. You killed 2 women because you were too scared to let go of your control. That's not strength, Thorne. That's cowardice. Thorne's face went purple with rage. I am saving our people. You're destroying them. Kane's voice cut through the temple like a blade. The curse doesn't keep us stable. It keeps us afraid. It makes alphas lose control, makes packs live in constant fear of their leaders. You're not protecting anything. You're prolonging suffering because you're addicted to the power it gives you. Better that than anarchy. Then let them choose. Sarah's voice was steady despite the knife at her throat. Let the packs decide for themselves whether they want the curse broken. Stop making decisions for everyone because you're too afraid to trust them. Thorne stared at her, and for a moment, she thought he might actually listen. Then his expression hardened. No. This is the only way. He yanked her upright, dragging her toward the altar. The sun had set. Through the open ceiling, Sarah could see the first stars appearing. The moon would rise soon. And Thorne would complete his ritual. Unless she stopped him first. Sarah closed her eyes and reached for her magic. It was suppressed by the Witchbane, held down and muted, but not gone. Never gone. Her mother had taught her that magic was part of her soul, and souls couldn't be fully contained. Moon Goddess, she prayed. If this prophecy is real, if Kane and I are meant to break this curse, please. Give me strength. The bond flared to life, brilliant and warm. Kane's power flooded through it, offered freely, his alpha strength bolstering her magic. She gasped at the intensity of it. And her magic surged. It exploded outward, ripping through the Witchbane's suppression like paper. Vines erupted from the temple floor, wrapping around Thorne's legs, his arms, yanking him away from her. He screamed, dropping the knife. Sarah fell to her knees, her wrists still bound, but she poured everything she had into her magic. Plants grew wild and fierce, reclaiming the temple that had once been theirs, and through it all, she felt Kane's presence like a steady drumbeat. Together, the bond whispered. We're stronger together. Thorne fought against the vines, his face twisted with fury. You'll destroy everything. No, Sarah said quietly. We'll save it. Kane was there in a heartbeat, breaking her chains, pulling her into his arms. His scent surrounded her, cedar smoke and winter frost, and for a moment, the world narrowed to just the 2 of them. Are you all right? His hands cupped her face, his eyes searching hers desperately. I am now. Then Darius was securing Thorne, and Derek was standing uncertainly at the edge of the temple, and the other wolves were spreading out to secure the area. But Sarah only had eyes for Kane. The prophecy, she said. We need to complete it. Break the curse. He nodded, and together, they approached the altar. If you're still listening to this story up to this point, why don't you subscribe to this channel to continue getting impactful daily stories like this? We would be most grateful if you can do that to help boost this video to reach everyone. Thank you. Chapter 5. The moon rose over the ancient temple like a silver benediction. Sarah stood at the altar with Kane beside her, their hands clasped, the mate bond singing between them with such intensity it was almost visible. Around them, the temple had transformed. What had been a place of decay and dark ritual was now alive with her magic, vines climbing the walls in spirals of green and silver, flowers blooming impossibly in the moonlight. Behind them, Thorn struggled against Darius's hold, his face contorted with rage and something that might have been fear. The other wolves formed a protective circle, weapons drawn, ready for whatever came next. "We don't know how to do this," Cain said quietly, his thumb tracing circles on the back of her hand. "The prophecy doesn't come with instructions." Sarah looked up at him, at this man who'd been forced into her life by a desperate kiss, who'd threatened her and protected her in equal measure, who was looking at her now like she held the answer to every question he'd ever asked. "I think we just have to trust it," she said. "Trust the bond. Trust the moon goddess. Trust each other." His gray eyes softened. "I do trust you. I don't think I've trusted anyone since Lyanna died, but Sarah. I trust you with everything." The words settled into her chest, warm and solid as a promise. She squeezed his hand and turned to face the altar. The prophecy scroll lay there, ancient and fragile, the words seeming to glow in the moonlight. "When the moon bleeds silver and the wolf crowns his witch. When magic and Fang are joined without fear. The curse of rage shall break upon their union. And the packs shall know peace for 100 years. Joined without fear," Sarah repeated softly. She looked at Cain. "That's the key, isn't it? Not just bonding, but doing it without fear. Without shame or hiding or pretending to be something we're not." Cain's hand came up to cup her face. "Then I'll say it here, in front of everyone. I love you, Sarah Silvermoon. Witch, mate, the woman who kissed me like her life depended on it and changed everything. I'm not afraid of what you are. I'm proud of it." Her breath caught. They hadn't said those words yet, hadn't had time between the threats and the secrets and the desperate race to stay alive. But hearing them now, feeling the absolute truth of them through the bond, made her eyes burn with tears. "I love you too," she whispered. "Even though you're bossy and controlling and terrible at expressing emotions. I'm working on that. And even though this whole situation started as a disaster." She smiled through her tears. "You're mine, Cain Blackthorn. My mate. My alpha. My future." The bond flared between them, and Sarah felt her magic rise in response. Not wild or desperate like before, but controlled, purposeful, flowing from her core down through their joined hands. Cain's alpha power met it halfway, golden and fierce, and where the two forces touched, something new was born. Silver gold light exploded outward from their clasped hands, filling the temple, spilling out through the open ceiling toward the moon. Sarah gasped as magic and power wove together, creating something stronger than either force alone, a binding that transcended bloodlines and history and every bitter division between their kinds. The curse shattered. She felt it break like chains falling away, felt the ancient magic that had twisted werewolf bloodlines for 3 centuries simply dissolve. Across the territory, every alpha, every wolf, felt the change. The constant edge of violence, the barely contained rage that had defined their existence, lifted like fog burning away in sunlight. Peace. Real, profound, terrifying peace. The light intensified until Sarah had to close her eyes against it. Through the bond, she felt Cain's wonder, his awe, his overwhelming relief that he'd been right to trust this, to trust her. When the light finally faded, the temple had gone absolutely silent. Thorn stared at them with an expression of pure horror. "What have you done?" he whispered. "You've destroyed us. Without the curse, without the fear, the packs will tear themselves apart." "No." Cain's voice rang out clear and strong. "Without the curse, we'll finally have a chance to be what we were meant to be. Strong without being violent. Powerful without being destructive. Free. You're naive. And you're finished." Cain turned to face Thorn fully, his alpha dominance radiating outward like a physical force. "Theron Thorn, you are accused of murdering Luna Lyanna Blackthorn, of murdering Sarah Silvermoon, of attempted murder of Luna Sarah Silvermoon, and of conspiracy to harm the Northern Territories pack. How do you plead? Thorne's face went purple. I was protecting. Guilty then. Kane's expression was carved from stone. The sentence for murdering Aluna is death. But my mate has a more fitting punishment in mind. All eyes turned to Sarah. She stepped forward, her magic still humming beneath her skin, amplified by Kane's power through their bond. Looking at Thorne, she felt not hatred but a profound sadness for everything he'd destroyed out of fear. You've spent your life terrified of what you couldn't control, she said quietly. You killed my mother. You killed Lyanna. You tried to kill me. All because you were afraid of what we represented: change, growth, the possibility that the old ways weren't the only ways. I was right to be afraid, Thorne spat. You'll destroy everything. No. But I will take something from you. Sarah raised her hand, and silver light gathered in her palm. Your wolf. Your connection to the pack. Your power. I'm stripping it all away, and you'll live the rest of your life as what you feared most: human. Mortal. Ordinary. Thorne's eyes went wide with terror. You can't, that's not possible. It is for a Silvermoon which bound to an Alpha King. Sarah's magic lashed out, precise and controlled, wrapping around Thorne's essence and pulling. His wolf fought, snarling and desperate, but her power was stronger. The moon-blessed union had made her stronger. She tore his wolf away. Thorne screamed. It was a sound of pure agony, of loss so profound it seemed to echo off the temple walls. When it finally stopped, he collapsed to his knees, sobbing, his eyes no longer glowing gold but simple human brown. Banished, Kane declared. You have 1 hour to leave Pack lands. If you're found within our territory after that, the sentence is death. Do you understand? Thorne nodded, broken, and Darius hauled him to his feet and dragged him toward the temple exit. Sarah watched him go and felt no triumph, only exhaustion and relief that it was finally over. Then Kane's arms came around her, pulling her against his chest, and she let herself collapse into his strength. It's done, he murmured into her hair. You're safe. We're safe. For now, she said. But Kane, there's still the council investigation, the postponed ceremony, Derek's testimony about the Shadowfang pack. We'll handle it. He pulled back just enough to meet her eyes. Together. Whatever comes next, we face it together. She nodded, and he kissed her. Not desperate or claiming like before, but tender, reverent, a promise of all the kisses yet to come. When they finally broke apart, Sarah became aware of the wolves around them dropping to one knee, heads bowed in a formal gesture of respect. Luna, they murmured in unison. Luna Sarah. Her eyes burned. She'd never expected this: acceptance, belonging, the title that Lyanna had held. It felt like both an honor and a weight. Kane's hand found hers again, steadying. Let's go home. But before they could leave the temple, a figure stumbled through the entrance. Derek collapsed against the doorframe, blood soaking through his shirt, his face pale as death. Behind him, 4 of Thorne's guards lay unconscious or worse. Derek. Sarah pulled away from Kane and rushed to him, her healer's instincts overriding everything else. What happened? Thorne had reinforcements. Derek's laugh turned into a cough that brought up blood. Waiting outside. They tried to storm the temple when they saw the light. I held them off. Thought it was the least I could do. His legs buckled. Sarah caught him, barely keeping him upright, and her magic surged automatically, seeking his injuries, cataloging the damage. Stab wound to the abdomen, possibly nicking his liver. Broken ribs. Internal bleeding. He was dying. Hold on, she commanded, laying him down on the temple floor. Her hands pressed against the wound, magic pouring from her palms. Just hold on, Derek. You don't get to do one good thing and then die. That's not how redemption works. Isn't it? His smile was weak. Seems poetic. The bastard who hurt you, sacrificing himself to save you. Very dramatic. Shut up and let me work. Tears streamed down her face as she poured more magic into him, stitching together torn tissue, encouraging blood to clot, fighting against the darkness trying to claim him. Cain dropped to his knees beside her, his hand on her shoulder. Sarah, if he's too far gone. He's not. Her voice was fierce. I won't let him die. Not after he finally chose right. Through the bond, Cain's power flowed into her, amplifying her magic. Together, they pulled Derek back from the edge, slowly, painfully, but steadily. His breathing strengthened. His color improved. The wound closed beneath her hands, leaving only a scar. When she finally pulled away, exhausted, Derek's eyes fluttered open. They were clear, lucid, and filled with something that might have been wonder. You saved me, he said hoarsely. After everything I did, you saved me. Because people can change, Sarah said quietly. Because you chose to be better. That matters, Derek. He nodded, tears sliding down his temples. I'm sorry. For all of it. For believing the Shadowfang lies, for trying to control you, for threatening you with your secret. I was a coward and a fool, and you deserved so much better. Yes, I did. She managed a small smile. But thank you. For saying it. For meaning it. I'll leave the territory, Derek said. Soon as I can stand. I'll go somewhere I can figure out who I'm supposed to be when I'm not following orders or chasing missions. Maybe find a way to actually help instead of hurt. Cain studied him for a long moment, then nodded. You have 1 month to recover. Then you leave, and you don't come back unless invited. Agreed? Agreed. Derek's eyes found Sarah's one last time. Be happy. You deserve it. Then Darius was there with a medical team, taking Derek away on a stretcher, and Sarah was left kneeling on the temple floor with Cain's arm around her shoulders. That was remarkably generous, Cain observed. Saving the man who tormented you for 2 years. I didn't do it for him. Sarah leaned into Cain's warmth. I did it because I'm not the person Derek tried to make me believe I was. I'm not weak or broken or lesser. I'm a healer. That's who I choose to be. A healer who just broke a 300-year-old curse and stripped an elder of his wolf. Cain's smile was soft. You're going to be a terrifying Luna, you know that? Good. The pack needs terrifying after everything they've been through. He laughed and pulled her to her feet. Come on. We have a binding ceremony to complete. Properly, this time. With witnesses and vows and you in a dress that costs more than most people's cars. Romantic. I'm working on it. The sacred binding ceremony took place 1 week later, under the full moon, with every pack in the Northern Territories in attendance. Sarah stood in the Luna's suite, staring at herself in the mirror, and barely recognized the woman looking back. Lissa had outdone herself. The dress was a masterpiece of silk and lace, silver and white, fitted through the bodice and flowing like water to the floor. Her hair was arranged in intricate braids woven with moonstones, and someone had painted delicate silver patterns on her arms that echoed the swirls of her magic. She looked like a witch queen from the old stories. Powerful and otherworldly and undeniably herself. You're stunning, Maya breathed from the doorway. Sarah, I can't believe this is real. You're marrying the Alpha King. I'm binding myself to my mate, Sarah corrected gently. The Alpha King thing is just a complicated bonus. Maya laughed and crossed the room to hug her. I'm so happy for you. After everything with Derek, after all the hiding and fear, you deserve this. You deserve someone who sees you and loves you exactly as you are. Sarah hugged her back, blinking away tears. Thank you. For being my friend even when I was a mess. For not asking questions when I couldn't give answers. That's what best friends are for. Maya pulled back, grinning. Now come on. Your terrifyingly hot mate is probably pacing a hole in the floor waiting for you. She wasn't wrong. When Sarah emerged onto the ceremonial grounds, a clearing in the forest illuminated by hundreds of floating orbs of silver light courtesy of her magic, Cain was indeed pacing. He wore traditional alpha formal wear, all black leather and silver clasps, and when he saw her, he stopped mid-stride. The look on his face made every terrible thing that had happened worth it. Sarah. He crossed to her in 3 long strides, taking her hands. You look, I don't have words. You're the most beautiful thing I've ever seen. You're not so bad yourself. She smiled up at him. Ready to get bound to a witch for eternity? I've been ready since you kissed me at that gala and turned my world upside down. The ceremony was conducted by Darius, who'd been granted temporary authority as Beta to perform the binding. He spoke the old words, the sacred vows that werewolves had been using for generations. Sarah and Cain repeated them, their voices steady, their eyes never leaving each other. Do you, Cain Blackthorn, Alpha King of the Northern Territories, take Sarah Silvermoon as your mate, your Luna, your equal in all things? I do. Do you, Sarah Silvermoon, last daughter of the Silvermoon Coven, take Cain Blackthorn as your mate, your Alpha, your equal in all things? I do. Then by the power vested in me by Pack Law and the grace of the Moon Goddess, I declare you bound. Darius smiled. You may seal your bond. Cain didn't wait for further instruction. He pulled Sarah into his arms and kissed her like they were the only 2 people in the world. The mate bond solidified, transforming from something fragile and new into something eternal and unbreakable. Silver gold light exploded around them again, and this time, Sarah knew every wolf present could see it, the visible proof of their moon-blessed union. When they finally broke apart, the crowd was cheering. Wolves howled their approval to the moon. And standing at the edge of the clearing, partially hidden by shadow, Sarah saw figures she'd thought she'd never see again. Women with silver hair and knowing eyes. The Silvermoon Coven, emerging from decades of hiding. Her grandmother stood at their center, tears streaming down her weathered face. Sarah's breath caught. She'd thought her entire coven dead, had believed herself the last Silvermoon. But they were here. They'd survived. They'd been waiting. After the ceremony, after the feast and the dancing and the formal presentations to the other alphas, Sarah slipped away to meet them. Her grandmother embraced her first, smelling of sage and moonflowers and memories Sarah had thought lost forever. My darling girl, she whispered. You've done what we could only dream of. You've brought our people home. I didn't know, I thought you were all gone. We've been hidden in the western forests, waiting for the curse to break. Waiting for the prophecy to be fulfilled. Her grandmother pulled back, cupping Sarah's face. Your mother would be so proud. You're everything she hoped you'd become. Sarah spent an hour with them, listening to stories of her mother as a young witch, learning the names of aunts and cousins she'd never known existed, feeling the hollow ache of her mother's loss ease just slightly with the knowledge that her family remained. When she finally returned to the celebration, Cain was waiting at the edge of the clearing. He'd removed his formal jacket, and around his neck. The moonstone pendant was gone. Sarah's hand went to her throat. Cain, Lioness token. I buried it at her grave this morning. His voice was steady, certain. I'll always carry her memory. Always honor what we had. But I'm choosing my future now. Choosing us. He took Sarah's hand, pressing it over his heart. You're my mate. My Luna. My love. And I don't need a token to remind me of that. Sarah's vision blurred with tears. She stood on her toes and kissed him, pouring everything she felt through the bond, love and gratitude and promise and hope. Take me home, she whispered against his lips. I want to start our forever. The Luna's suite had been transformed. Someone, probably Darius with his frightening efficiency, had filled it with candles and flowers, creating an atmosphere of soft romance rather than the clinical perfection it had held before. The bed was covered in silver silk, and moonlight streamed through the windows, painting everything in shades of pearl and shadow. Cain closed and locked the door behind them, and suddenly the reality of what came next settled on Sarah's shoulders. They were bonded now. Mated. This was their wedding night, when the bond would be consummated and made complete. She wanted this, wanted him, but nerves still fluttered in her stomach. Second thoughts? Kane's voice was gentle. He stood across the room, giving her space, his gray eyes patient and understanding. No. Never. Sarah moved toward him. Just, taking it in. A month ago, I was a struggling apothecary owner trying to avoid my ex-boyfriend. Now I'm the Luna Queen who broke a 300-year-old curse. Life comes at you fast. His lips quirked. For what it's worth, I'm grateful for every chaotic moment. Even the desperate kiss that started it all. Especially the desperate kiss. Sarah reached up to cup his face. Kane, I need to tell you something. Before we do this, before everything changes again. His expression grew serious. All right. She took his hand and placed it flat against her abdomen. Then she let her magic flow, just a whisper of power, just enough to show him what she discovered 3 days ago when her healer's senses had picked up a second heartbeat nestled inside her own. Kane's eyes went wide. His hand pressed more firmly against her stomach, as if he could feel through to the tiny spark of life growing there. He couldn't seem to finish the sentence. Pregnant, Sarah confirmed softly. About 3 weeks. Which means it happened the night after the council postponed the ceremony, when you came to my room after the library attack, when we finally stopped fighting the bond and just let ourselves have each other. That night had been desperate and tender in equal measure, both of them needing proof that they were alive, that the bond was real, that something good could come from all the chaos. They'd made love like drowning people finding air, and apparently, they'd created something miraculous in the process. A child. Kane's voice was rough with emotion. Our child. The first witch-wolf hybrid in centuries. The living symbol of the moon-blessed union. Sarah covered his hand with hers. Is this okay? I know we didn't plan this, didn't even discuss whether we wanted children. Kane dropped to his knees. His arms came around her waist, his face pressing against her stomach, and his shoulders shook with the force of his emotion. Through the bond, Sarah felt everything he was feeling, overwhelming joy, terror at the responsibility, wonder at the miracle, and love so profound it took her breath away. Okay, he managed finally. Sarah, I thought after Lyanna, after losing her and the future we'd planned, I'd never have this. Never have a family, never have a child, never have hope beyond just surviving day to day. He looked up at her, his eyes wet. You've given me everything. A second chance at love, at happiness, at living instead of just existing. And now this? He kissed her stomach reverently, and Sarah's own tears started falling. I love you, she whispered. I love you so much it terrifies me. Good. Be terrified with me. He stood, pulling her into his arms. We'll figure this out together. The pregnancy, the hybrid child, ruling the territories, teaching wolves and witches to coexist. All of it. Together. Together, she agreed. Then he was kissing her, and the tenderness gave way to heat. His hands found the laces of her dress, carefully undoing them, and she worked at the clasps of his formal wear with increasing urgency. They undressed each other slowly, taking time to map skin and curves and scars, learning each other without desperation driving them. When they finally came together, it was perfect. Not wild or frantic, but steady and sure, two people choosing each other with full knowledge of what that choice meant. The mate bonds sang between them, amplifying every touch, every whispered endearment, every moment of pleasure until Sarah couldn't tell where she ended and Kane began. They were one. Finally, completely, eternally one. Afterward, they lay tangled together in the silk sheets, Kane's hand resting protectively over her stomach, Sarah's fingers tracing the scars on his shoulder that she'd healed. What happens now? She asked quietly. Now? Kane pressed a kiss to her temple. Now we change the world. You're going to open a school, aren't you? To teach young witches and wolves together. She blinked in surprise. How did you know? Because I know you. You're a healer and a teacher at heart. You won't be satisfied just being Luna. You'll want to build something that lasts beyond us. Something that ensures what we started here continues for generations. Would you support that? A school that teaches magic alongside pack traditions? I'll fund it personally. And I'll make attendance mandatory for all pack children over the age of 10. If we're going to have true peace between our kinds, it has to start with the next generation. Sarah rolled to face him fully, her heart so full it ached. You're going to be an amazing father. His hand tightened on her hip. And you're going to be an amazing mother. An amazing Luna. An amazing witch queen. He paused. That's your formal title, by the way. Luna Sarah Silvermoon Blackthorn, Witch Queen of the Northern Territories. Darius insisted we make it official. Darius is a secret romantic. Don't tell him that. He'll growl at you. They laughed together, and Sarah thought about how impossible this all would have seemed a month ago. How a desperate kiss at a gala had turned into prophecy fulfilled, curses broken, love found. Thank you, she said softly. For what? For being worth the risk. For being the kind of man who could set aside prejudice and fear. For choosing me even when it would have been easier to reject the bond and move on with your life. Kane's expression grew serious. Sarah, from the moment you kissed me, there was no moving on. You were it. My second chance. My forever. His thumb traced her lower lip. I should be thanking you for seeing past the cursed alpha reputation, for being brave enough to trust me with your secrets, for loving me despite everything. We saved each other, Sarah decided. That's what the moon-blessed union really means. Not one person saving the other, but two people choosing to face the darkness together and create light. I like that. He pulled her closer. Let's keep doing that. For the next 100 years and beyond. Deal. Outside, the moon reached its apex, painting the room in silver light. Somewhere in the forest, wolves howled their joy to the sky. And in the fortress, in the arms of her mate, Sarah Silvermoon Blackthorn, healer, witch, Luna, and queen, closed her eyes and let herself believe in happily ever after. Because they'd earned it. Together. Epilogue, 6 months later. The Silvermoon Academy opened its doors on the first day of autumn, when the leaves were turning gold and the air carried the first hints of winter. Sarah stood at the entrance, watching children arrive, wolf cubs and young witches, walking together instead of in fear. The building had been Kane's gift to her, a beautiful structure of stone and glass built at the edge of the forest, equipped with classrooms and practice grounds and libraries filled with books from both traditions. Her hand rested on her rounded stomach, where their daughter grew strong and healthy. They'd learned the gender last week, and Kane had immediately started building a nursery, his nesting instincts in full force. Ready for the first day? Darius appeared at her side, holding a clipboard and looking remarkably cheerful for someone managing logistics. As ready as I'll ever be. Sarah smiled. Thank you for handling all the administrative details. I know it's not exactly in your beta job description. Are you kidding? Watching a bunch of tiny witches and wolves learn to work together is going to be hilarious. I've taken bets on how long it takes for the first accidental transformation. You're terrible. I'm realistic. He grinned. Kane's waiting for you inside, by the way. He wanted to make an appearance for the opening ceremony. Sarah found him in the main hall, surrounded by children who were asking 100 questions at once. He answered patiently, his alpha dominance carefully banked so he wouldn't frighten the younger ones, and when he saw her, his face lit up with a smile that still made her heart skip. Luna Sarah. One of the wolf cubs, a girl maybe 7 years old with pigtails, bounced over. Is it true you broke a 300-year-old curse? With help, Sarah said. It wasn't just me. It took magic and alpha power working together. And you're having a baby who's going to be both witch and wolf. A young witch boy, dark-haired and serious, studied her stomach with fascination. What will she be like? Strong, Cain said, coming to stand beside Sarah, his hand finding the small of her back. Brave. Kind. Everything the future needs. The children absorbed this with solemn nods, then scattered to explore the academy, their earlier suspicions of each other already giving way to the universal language of childhood curiosity. Sarah leaned into Cain's warmth. This is really happening. We're really doing this. We are. He pressed a kiss to her temple. The world is changing. Because of you. Because you were brave enough to kiss an alpha king and refuse to apologize for being exactly who you are. Best impulse decision I ever made. Same. They stood together, watching the future unfold in the laughter of children who would never know the divisions that had defined their parents' generation. And Sarah thought about prophecies and curses, about desperate kisses and second chances, about love that was worth fighting for. The moon-blessed union hadn't just broken a curse. It had changed everything. And they were only beginning. The end. Thank you for watching this video. Subscribe, like and share this video to continue listening to this type of story daily and also, to appreciate this community too. I would like to hear your wonderful opinion about this story. Please comment below.